We've been doing focus groups every single week since the election and the inauguration. And Donald Trump is keeping his focus. He promised to deal with immigration. That's one of the first things that he set forward. He promised to address Ukraine. Now, I need to point out one thing that's important, which is that the language that he's using is not as effective as it could be. But that aside, the issues, the priorities, what the public wants him to do, he seems to be doing. And so he's being rewarded for, in essence, keeping his campaign promises.
You add the DOGE and things start to get a little bit more complicated. Correct. This is red meat. They love the chainsaw at CPAC for a lot of MAGA. But even some Republicans are starting to worry. I don't know what the DOGE focus group is going to tell us, Frank Luntz, but the Washington Post compiled comments from Republican members of Congress, specifically Lisa Murkowski. Now, granted, these are not big Trumpers. Lisa Murkowski, John Curtis, Don Bacon, Brian Fitzpatrick. They've used words such as embarrassing, cruel, absurd, extortion, and language. Trauma. Yes.
The issue is the language, not the goal, not the mission.
Do voters think this?
The voters are tired of wasteful Washington spending. Waste, fraud, abuse, mismanagement, even corruption. Mm-hmm. And they applaud what he's doing. The question is he doing it in a way that they appreciate? There's some sadness when someone loses their job. There's pain when a family suddenly finds that the breadwinner is out of work. And that doesn't seem to be communicated from this White House. The public has an issue with his language, but not with his strategy. And it's the same thing that I hear up on Capitol Hill. If you're on the side of the status quo, you're losing. Mm-hmm. The American people have said enough, with all caps and an exclamation point, enough. But they haven't said enough about compassion, about empathy. And if this administration tones it down and does exactly what they say, says what they mean, means what they say, but does so with empathy and compassion, they're going to be even more popular than they are today.
Well, Frank, we just heard from the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, that Elon Musk is going to be attending the president's first cabinet meeting tomorrow. The rest of the cabinet officials, presumably, who will be in that room are the ones who have been confirmed through the advice and consent process in the U.S. Senate that don't or have divested from conflicts of interest they may have. Those things are not true for Elon Musk. Does that matter to the American voter?
Nobody cares. Nobody cares. And in fact, Musk is almost a lightning rod. Musk is the best thing for Donald Trump because he's out there with the chainsaw, appealing to the hardcore MAGA people. It allows Trump to do what he's doing, and everyone who's angry at it is now angry at Elon Musk. It's actually a brilliant strategy. People keep saying that the two of them are going to blow apart. I don't see that. But Musk's language as well, and I realize I sound like a broken record, but this stuff matters in government. It matters in getting stuff done. If you communicate in a way that the public starts to resent you or reject you, it slows your momentum and it undermines your ability to get things done. Trump has focused on waste, and that is what the public has waited for, frankly, for 40 years. But they don't want to punish people just because you happen to get a check from the government. They don't want to punish you because you work for the government. And that's the feeling that's happening. You saw all these town halls when they're attacking the politicians. They're not really attacking the politicians. They want to know, can we do this better? Use a scalpel rather than a machine gun.
There have been comparisons to the town halls back in Barack Obama's first term that tipped over the whole idea of Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act. Is it different this time, or is that an apt comparison?
I think it's an apt comparison because it's performance. People are going there not to learn. They're going there not to listen. They're going there to shout.
Okay.
And so they want to be heard. But that was Trump's campaign, was a campaign of shouting, and it gave him the election. It's okay to shout if you get something done. The most important word in Washington right now is results. And if Trump gets results, he will get President Trump, if President Trump gets results, that will move his agenda forward, and he'll be able to go even further on some of these other issues that he hasn't gotten to. And the key to that is successful messaging that the public hears and sees and feels the change. They are hearing and seeing and feeling it, but they're getting the negative as well, and that doesn't need to be happening.
Well, so when we talk about the change the public is looking for, what about what they're seeing at the grocery store? Price of eggs, just inflationary dynamics in general. We look at the consumer confidence data we got today, fell by the most since August of 2021. On concerns about the outlook, you saw inflation expectations pick up. Is that going to come back to bite this administration in short order?
It absolutely could, and the key for the president is to lower expectations. There are some things that you can do in 30 days, such as what he's doing with Ukraine. Whether you agree with it or not, he is moving towards bringing that to an end. Inflation doesn't rise or fall in 30 days. It's a longer process, requires supply chain fixes, requires lower energy prices. There's so much involved in it. And from a political standpoint, Americans don't pay attention to that. They simply pay attention to affordability, food, fuel, housing, and health care. The president would be well served to lower expectations because it's going to take 6 months or a year for his policies to actually have an impact. And by saying that he's going to bring it down now, you shouldn't make that promise, and that could hurt him as well. You know, it's weird because I'm listening to what I'm saying here. As a president, he's been the most significant since FDR. He's caused more change, more agitation than any president since Andrew Jackson. And it's remarkable how people have already taken sides. But the public is supporting what he's doing. The concern is how he's doing it. And that's something that maybe he'll get the message. Maybe he'll see this video. I think he wants to do it his way. I can hear Frank Sinatra playing in the background. But in the end, how he does it determines his success or his failure.
You can hear Steve Bannon talking in the background, too, not even about Elon, but about flooding the zone. You're a communications expert. This is essentially what we're talking about. Can he keep up this clip beyond the first 100 days? Is that even a strategy, or is it to get them on their heels at the beginning of the term so you can get done as much as you can in a closed window?
So again, I do this often to compliment both of you because you're saying exactly what the public is thinking. Can he keep it up? The answer is yes. He absolutely can. But when you do that, when you flood the zone, you make mistakes.
Yeah.
When you flood the zone, there's a positive and a negative to it. And the question for the Trump administration, does he seize every opportunity and minimize the risks of failure? At this point, he looks like it's maximum effort with maximum challenge to that agenda. He's going to do it. So the question is, can he prepare himself and the people around him to say, that one you shouldn't do, that one you should pull back on? I don't think so. But that's the challenge for this administration.
Well, and there's also a question, too, here, Frank, about how much approval of what Trump is doing even matters. When he entered a lame duck, he can't, at least the way the laws are written now, run for a third term in office. That same thing is not true for a number of people on Capitol Hill who are trying to get reelected next year. When you look at the midterms, is the picture is the road ahead as easy for some of these lawmakers who are going to try to seek re-election because of the policies of this administration?
So promise me you won't get angry with this response.
Never.
There are some, that's not true. There are some things more important than elections. This is a very critical time for this country. There are serious divides, there's serious anger, there's a loss of faith and trust in the future. There's a belief that our institutions are failing us. That whether or not they get reelected is not the question at this moment. It's whether or not we can put our country back together, whether we can take this shattered puzzle that is incredibly beautiful when it's united, but it looks pretty ugly as pieces on the table. I'm hoping that this president keeps his promises, continues pushing forward, adopts the language so that the public can really hear and see what's happening, and has a little bit of empathy. Because that's a successful democracy. When your voice is heard, when it's paid attention to, and you can actually see the changes happening. Some of that in the first 35 days is happening. But there are danger. There's threats that is also. And that messaging, I would just love a little bit of a Lincoln or a Jefferson or a Washington to kind of get, or a Churchill, to get into this communication. Because it's not just about the details of today or how they impact the election tomorrow. It's what happens for your children and your grandchildren and the generations to come.